The stars also move 1 degree every 72 years. There's now a 23-degree difference, almost a full sign behind. But the lens that I practice is known as alchemical astronomy or true sidereal astrology, because when you actually look at the visible sky, the constellations are all different sizes. Virgo is like 42 degrees. Aries is only 18 degrees. We also include the 13th sign, Ophiuchus. It's ruled by Chiron, the wounded healer. The element is the ether. So it's the fifth element. So it kind of,
Transit of Neptune. Obviously, that's not what's happening.
what you're feeling is more so the nodal axis right now. And moving now into Aquarius, it's going to bring more clarity or freedom as far as the collective dharma is concerned. While the South Node moving through Leo and dismantling egoic spirituality, anything that's superficial or done for the likes.
Hello and welcome back to Ultra Minds with JK Ultra. I'm super excited for this conversation today because what we've been doing over here on the YouTube channel is really like deconstructing a lot of foundational spiritual beliefs that I think a lot of us have started to outgrow. So I'm really excited for my guest today because the triggers are going to come up. So I'm just warning you guys. And so what we're going to be doing is breaking down some true astrology. And you know what? Listen with an open mind, take or leave. If you're ready to kind of deconstruct your beliefs, this is going to be a really great conversation. So I would love to introduce my guest, Lumi, who is a polymath of many different systems, practices. But today we're going to be talking about the true astrology. Welcome, Lumi. It's so good to finally have this chat. I actually came across your content I feel like early on of you launching that Instagram page. I feel like I saw it kind of right away, and it came up with this like kind of very triggering video of like astrology is wrong and what you see in the sky is not what's happening in the sky. And it actually sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole that day. And so welcome, and I'm excited to get into all of this.
Yay. I'm so pleased to be here. It's an honor. And I'm so excited to connect others with this triggering information.
So first, can you give us kind of a general, Western versus sidereal, like what exactly is going on? What is the difference? And, kind of why are they different?
Absolutely. Okay. So, tropical astrology, the Western lens, is what most people are familiar with. Like when you say astrology, most people are referring to the Western astrology. It is the most prevalent on social media, and it's based on like most of the information as far as astrology goes. So, I often say in my content that it's incomplete because it's only measuring the material cycles because it's fixed to the equinoxes, right? So like to understand astrology in general, there's like different layers of time and cycles that we're measuring, right? So we have the lower cycles on Earth, like the solstices, the equinoxes, like changes from light to dark, right? And that is measured with tropical astrology. However, the stars also move. So they are shifting in the sky 1 degree every 72 years. So it's slow, right? But over the 2000 years that Western astrology has been in place, like 200 AD is when tropical astrology came into being. Although, I mean, timelines, who knows really what time we're at right now, where we are in time, but that's what they say. So there's now a 23-degree difference between where tropical astrology says, say, for example, the sun, right? On March 21st, the spring equinox, tropical astrology says that the sun is at the first degree of Aries. But in actuality, the sun is in Pisces on March 21st now because of that shift over time. Now, this is what Vedic astrology. So, there's a lot of people who are familiar with Vedic, which is sidereal. Sidereal just means of the stars is the translation. So it's literally connected to the stars, which is why tropical astrology isn't really astrology. It should be called seasonology because it has nothing to do with the stars. So yeah, Vedic astrology measures that 23-degree shift, right? So it's almost a full sign behind when you're looking at the 30-degree decans and in the traditional zodiac. But the lens that I practice is known as alchemical astronomy or true sidereal astrology, because when you actually look at the visible sky, the constellations are all different sizes. So, for example, like Virgo is like 42 degrees. Like it takes the sun 42 days to get through the constellation of Virgo. And some other constellations, like Aries, is only 18 degrees because it's a smaller constellation. So, we're looking at the actual, like, it's literally like a primary experience where you can look at the sky, see where things are, like the energy of the planet or the etheric body, the point, whatever it is, moving through the constellation, which is a star grouping, which holds its own archetypal energy. And then we make our deductions based on that. And we also include the 13th sign, Ophiuchus, which is right over the galactic center. Shares the sky with Scorpio. The sun just transited this part of the sky actually over the holidays. It goes through a death and rebirth cycle when it goes through Scorpio and Ophiuchus. So those are the main differences.
Wow, very cool. This is even more expanded than what I understand about the Vedic astrology and things like that. So, can you tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about this 13th sign? You know, it's come up, it kind of like every couple of years, like comes up in like the news or the collective, and they're like, and then it kind of dwindles down again. So, can you explain this 13th sign?
Absolutely. Okay, so Ophiuchus is an anomaly. It's a choice point or like a pattern interrupt, which is if you know quantum physics, you know that you need a pattern interrupt. Otherwise, it just goes around in the same circle, right? So, like, I often compare tropical astrology to true sidereal in the sense of like tropical is the wheel of samsara, right? So it's just the 12, the belt of the 12, which contains us in the physical world, and there's no chance for escape. Like it's just the same thing over and over again. Ophiuchus is right over the galactic center as far as its position in the sky, which is a black hole, which is a feminine expanding force. We, the fourth way, right? Like looking at the law of three, you need a masculine, a feminine, and the neutral blank force for anything to come into being, and everything comes out of the feminine. The masculine serves the feminine, right? So our universe actually revolves around the galactic center because it's a vacuum. And that's where this constellation Ophiuchus is. Now, the mythology of Ophiuchus, the Greek mythology, is based on Asclepius, like the god of like resurrection. So Asclepius, like the myth was like he was resurrecting people from the dead, and Zeus was like, "No, like we're not going to do that." So he like smited him, right? And Asclepius is the rod of Asclepius is like the symbol for medicine. The serpent bearer is what Ophiuchus is. And although the mythology, although the mythology, just putting my phone on or my computer on do not disturb. Hold on, sorry. Although the mythology is masculine, the energy of Ophiuchus is actually feminine when you look at it because of this vacuum force. It's ruled by Chiron, the wounded healer, and the element is the ether. So it's the fifth element. So it kind of breaks the pattern. Like when you look at the zodiac, there's two different patterns, the elementals and the modalities that go in order. So you go through technically from Aries to Scorpio, there's two rounds of the elements. And then we have Ophiuchus as the ninth sign, which is the completion or the choice point that allows you to turn the wheel of samsara, the never ending suffering, and the 12 into spiral dynamics. So at this
Mhm.
point, when anything passes over Ophiuchus, like the sun passing through Scorpio and Ophiuchus during the holiday season is one of the most diabolical things that you can think of when you look at like the greater patterns of everything. Because really, we should be going within, right, and allowing like the collective death and rebirth of our identity to be deconstructed through Scorpio and then reborn like the phoenix through the ashes with Ophiuchus.
Wow. And so there is people who have this as like their sun sign then.
Yes. Yeah. Technically, there's a couple of there's not solid agreement on the exact boundaries around Ophiuchus. If you look at the International Astronomical Association, they give Ophiuchus a bit of a longer point as far as the sky goes. The system that I use is based on Mastering the Zodiac's software. Athen Chimenti, who is a medical astrologer, someone who's been at the forefront of developing the software and the statistics and specifics. And he uses a midpoint system. So based on his calculations, it's December 7th to, I believe, the 18th or 19th that the sun passes through Ophiuchus. So my daughter was born like smack dab in the middle of that period of time. So
Wow.
she's an Ophiuchus sun.
And so, obviously a lot of people are going to hear this, myself included. And, in from what I've seen of sidereal, I'm a Leo in tropical. I don't want to be a Cancer. And, like my husband's a Sag. He doesn't want to be a Scorpio, even though it makes sense because I'm always with Scorpios. But so how does somebody kind of move towards like this true astrology? And what is the other astrology still like it still works? It still seems like it works for people, right? It's like they see these archetypes and they see these descriptions. So I guess one is the how does somebody kind of deal with that because it's very identity based?
Yes.
And then also, are these archetypes different? Like, is an Aries in sidereal different than an Aries in Western?
So we use the same archetypal interpretation. So the same, like an Aries is an Aries and a Pisces is a Pisces in both of the systems that I use. So as far as like this is really where people get hung up or like it can be tricky because we do form identities, right? We around especially around the traits and characteristics that we really enjoy about the different zodiac signs that we have been told, right? And the thing is, in my experience, I mean, there's a few different things that I want to say in response to this. First, I guess your chart, looking at your chart, you're still a Leo as far as your sun is concerned, because Leo is a massive constellation.
Oh,
So
awesome.
you were it's like 30 something degrees when you look at it in the sky. So you're in your tropical, I believe you were in the higher degrees of Leo. So you're just in the earlier degrees of Leo, but you're
Mm.
still Leo 10th house as far as your sun goes, right? So that feeling, that felt sense, yeah, that you had as far as that goes is still correct, right? But that's not common. Usually the sun sign does change, right? Because there
Mhm.
is so much difference. And like for from my personal example, from the comparison with my charts, like in tropical, I was an Aries sun, right? I derived a lot of pride from that. I like being an Aries, like Aries and Leo, those fire signs, right? Like
You give Aries, you
yeah,
do.
I do, right? But so here's where it is, right? So it's not like tropical is wrong. It's just not totally congruent. It's just like,
Mm.
I'm going to date myself here, but like when we had like radio or like I grew up in the country and we had like TV on antennas, right? So it was like you had to turn the dial to get the channel. And like when it was turning, you could start to see the picture coming in before you got to the exact channel, right? So that's kind of how I envision it, right? Or like I feel it. It's like tropical is like just before you get the actual picture. So it's not wrong, but it's just a little cloudy, right? So
Mhm.
in my chart, I'm a Pisces sun in a true sidereal, but my Mars and my Mercury, which were in Taurus in tropical, and I always like I felt like there was something wrong with me because I am a spaz. Like I am impulsive. I like act. I put my foot in my mouth all the time. This is why it's easy for me to make the sort of antagonistic content that I do because I have an Aries, Mars, and Mercury. Like, right? So even though my sun is in Pisces in the 10th house, right? So I'm here to be a spiritual teacher publicly. I think I sound and I act like an Aries. And this is what I find where, like, in all the different charts that I've compared, looking at people's tropical versus their sidereal, there's a good like 8 months there where I was just like comparing charts, right? Like I was like trying to find the patterns and see how it all worked. Because for a while when I had this revelation, I was like, none of these systems are worth anything. Like I'm living a lie, and
Throw everything away.
yeah. So, but then once I started comparing, I started to see these sorts of nuances, right? Where it's like a lot of times the energy that we resonate with, right? Like, so you're like, I am a Leo. Like, I really feel like I have, and you have a lot of other Leo actually in your chart looking at the true sky as well. So it makes sense that you've got that resonance with that energy, and that's not wrong, right? Like that's your felt sense of who you are and the archetype that fits within you. When you look at it, it's just like turning the dial. It just makes a little bit more sense as far as where that energy is in the chart.
Okay, I love that. And so also, you have talked about how it's almost like the tropical is kind of, you've said like the matrix or like maybe this physical plane. And then with a lot of times when you go to like more expanded parts of spirituality, it is like we're actually letting go of these things that are not the self. And you kind of described this true astrology as kind of letting go of the things that are not the self. So can you kind of explain how you would explain that? Sorry.
Yeah,
How would you explain
absolutely.
that?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, like part of how I came to this revelation. I guess a kind of funny a Freudian slip there because it is a revolution, the internal revolution. Like part of how I realized this. I had a whole business based on tropical astrology, human design, and gene keys, which are both based in tropical astrology, right? Like I was leading circles, I had clients, like I was making content all based on the tropical lens, doing readings and all of that. And it took me a bit to be able to see the true sky because my ego, like my whole business was built around this system, right? But then once I started like in my own work, I was really working deeply with the I am and like the realization that we are everything, right? Like I'm not just an Aries sun and Taurus moon, Cancer rising, right? Like I am everything. I'm all of the archetypes. So like I can't deny any of them. So like who's to say that I'm all of these specific things? So there's that piece of it, right? Like really, when you get deeper into more advanced spirituality, you can't be defined by anything, right? So it's taking doesn't matter what system you're using, right? Even true sidereal, it's not predetermined. It doesn't rule your life. It's more of a confirmation or like a permission slip to your natural kind of ways of being. So as far as comparing the two systems, like looking at the tropical patterns and the archetypes that are involved with that, the trend that I've seen is that they tend to represent like predispositions or coping mechanisms because it's based on like your psychology, right? And like the material plane and like your brain, which rules the material plane. So it tends to represent patterns or habits or ways of being that would have supported you through the illusion of separation and like the density of the matrix, right? Like the avatar that you needed, being an Aries sun served me as a child who needed to stand up for myself, right? Like that kind of idea, the aggression, like the impulsiveness, all these sorts of things definitely were really prevalent in my early life. And now that I'm older, I can see how I am the Pisces energy, right? But it's like I had to kind of grow into that or like release the patterning of the tropical self in order to step into my true self as far as this true
Mhm.
sidereal goes.
I love that. And, it's also too like kind of a graduation, right? Because it's like astrology is like, just very common. It was in every single
Uh-huh.
newspaper growing up. So it's like that then you go to these kind of higher levels of spirituality and then you do release some of these coping mechanisms, patterns, identities, and this is a little bit of a side tangent, but one thing that I've been reflecting on recently is, say like the starseed stuff. I feel that it's the same type of archetypal thing, that it's kind of more of like maybe someone's like purpose or soul mission is more aligned with this as opposed to maybe they actually are from this other planet. We don't even know if planets are really planets.
You're right.
We don't even know if
I,
space
I
is
I'm
really
not sure
space.
that they are. Honestly, I'm not sure I believe in the concept of space in the way
Mm.
that we're given it, but like they're like beings. I feel like the planets are like they're like their own characters almost when you look at the
Absolutely.
archetypes of them. Yeah.
I feel the same way. So I feel like, astrology, the way that I've kind of seen it is like our personality archetypes. And then the star seed concept is more of like maybe like a soul mission at this time or like a soul purpose at this time archetype that they're like, oh, I come from the Pleiades or Arcturus or Lyran. And that's just actually kind of what the soul is like personality at this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting too, is that then you kind of graduate beyond those things and you're like, well, I'm all the stuff and I'm nothing.
Yeah.
And the same thing with this too. So, um, but I know that it's going to be very triggering for people because it is still very much like you said, the coping mechanism. This is the things that got them through situations, being a Taurus got them through situations. Having, say, I know people like Aries moon, like they need that Aries moon archetype to do what they need to do.
Yes.
And, but letting go of the things that are not ourself is what
Yes.
allows us to truly grow. Identity sometimes, is kind of, I mean, even the identity of like, I'm a good person. To release those things actually starts to free you. And as we know, most of the things that are like bad things that happen in the world are people who think they're doing the right thing. So all
Totally.
identities need to be dissolved, including the ones we really like and, whatever have our necklaces of and, that says like Leo or Virgo. Um, Okay, so let's look a little bit. We said we were going to use my chart as an example. So I'm going to
Mhm.
put it up on the screen and then let me know whenever you want me to take it down from my end. But so we can also
Okay.
see your pointer of anything you want to point out.
Okay, let me get on the screen here. Okay, you can see it moving?
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, so here we have the side by side. This is just a standard tropical chart that I pulled from AstroSeek. And then on the right here, this is the true sidereal 13 sign lens. It comes from masteringthezodiac.com. I got to put a little plug in for their software. They just came out with this web based software called True Sky, and it is a game changer because previous to this, like, the software was really inaccessible, so it was hard to actually get a chart based on the uneven zodiac. So we can see around the outside here the varying sizes, right? So you still have a lot of activity in Leo because Leo is freaking huge, right? Whereas, Aries is smaller. Scorpio, Ophiuchus, they basically share the size of a regular constellation down here, right? So one thing I want to point out as well, kind of on the last bit that we were talking about the difference between tropical and sidereal. A lot of times people will compare tropical to like your psychology, your predispositions, your habits, within the material world, and then Vedic is your celestial self, right? But
Mhm.
this system combines both of them because we have the celestial cycle with the authentic visible sky positions on the outside, but we're still using an even 12 house system on the inside. This is a question that comes up a lot actually in my content. Like, why isn't there 13 houses? And this is because the 12 is the ruler of the physical world. Like the calendar and the clock and the even segments, those are all functions of linear time and the lower three dimensions. So when it comes to the houses, which is based off of the light and dark, right? Like your rising sign designates the beginning of the first house. And from there, we have the 12 even segments because this is the 12 hours of the day, the 12 hours of the night, right? Like, which is an important part of our experience. And the houses represent like your hero's journey on Earth, essentially. So we have both. We've got the 12 on the inside with the houses, and then we've got the uneven 13 on the outside representing the quantum, essentially. So, just looking at your charts, like, the main thing, obviously, you I just have to say also, you have a lot going on here, honey. Like, you're here
And
on
say whatever you have to say. I'm very open, so don't worry.
I mean, like, it's just obvious, it's interesting. We often attract people with similar kind of designs into our orbit, right? So, like, it seems like every time I read someone's chart, it's like they're here on like a massive karmic mission, essentially. Like, there's so much, just looking at in both systems, there's a bit more, I have more aspects turned on here, some different things I wasn't able to capture on AstroSeek, but like just the amount of communication between the etheric bodies at the moment that you were born, like it's not simple. Like you're very multifaceted, and there's a lot of nuance to your experience here on Earth. Um, so the sign obviously still here we're in Leo in the 10th house. So like this is somebody who's here to be seen, right? Like you're here to be on the stage as far as leadership goes, visibility. You're very confident being seen. And like that is meant to be seen publicly, like this is your legacy, and that is the case in both, right? Because we still have the sun in the 10th house here. Now in your tropical, your Mercury and then also your Black Moon Lilith and your South Node would be right here in Virgo, right? So this difference is important because your challenges, right? So like you're here, the Black Moon Lilith is like what you're here to disrupt, right? And your South Node is your karma, what you're here to move away from. So having that in Virgo in your tropical chart would mean that you would have difficulties with like over service, like people pleasing, like the healer archetype of Virgo, like putting like hard work, working yourself into the ground, that kind of energy. That would have been the karma within your community type of stuff here when it comes to the tropical chart. In your true sidereal, the karma that you're moving away from and like the energy that you're here to disrupt is the same energy as far as like your Mercury and your Sun. So it does kind of complicate things a little bit as far as like
Mhm.
it makes it your mission like a little bit more challenging, I would say. Like it definitely indicates that you're like a very advanced soul to be able to hold the frequency of like your ego, your identity, the way that you think, the way that you communicate, and then having the energy of Black Moon Lilith and the disruption, the return of the feminine power, the feminine putting her foot down, and then also though the South Node in that, right? So it just means that you're able to hold that polarity, moving away from like the tropical identity or the matrix pattern of like fixing, over explaining, a lot of like over explaining, mental rumination, these sorts of things in Virgo, right? Moving away from an identity where you're fixing or explaining or improving systems for others, like serving
Mhm.
the other before you serve yourself. And into an energy where you're performing for the group, like it's like less in the community in like a one-on-one kind of level with the tropical chart and more you're on the stage, like you're here to make an impact on a more macro level, I would say, with these sorts
Mhm.
of placements in the true sidereal. And like and with it being in the 11th house here, you've got like the 11th house, but your Mercury was in the 10th house, right? So like you're in the true sidereal, like you're really community oriented, like you're here to bring that charisma of Leo, like the heart-centered leadership, like the non-performative, like the authentic leadership, authentic spirituality, and like even just like the way that you were describing like the things, the content that you're making now, like debunking spiritual myths and outgrowing patterns and things like that. That is all indicative of all this stuff. Leo in the 11th house, basically, like you're here to bring that heart-centered leadership and authentic spirituality to
Mhm.
community. So there's that.
Right. Wow. And about the node actually not being in Virgo, that's one of the things that I always kind of struggled with in astrology because, there's all of these like kind of karmic paths and things like that. And I never really resonated with the nodes in general because when I would read about my node, I was kind of like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't really think
Yeah.
I'm overcoming people pleasing or things like that. So that's really interesting that, that was like really one of the first things that you pointed out because that's really one of the things that I've kind of been like, huh, maybe I can kind of shoehorn
Yes.
that in and
That's
make it
it.
work.
The shoehorn, that's a great analogy for it, Jen, honestly, because that's what it is. Like tropical astrology, in my experience, based on my unofficial research, right, which is, I'm an autistic polymath. Like I do this stuff for fun. So I would say that there's some weight to my research. But anyways, like I would say it unofficially, it tracks about 75% of the time, right? So like, well, there's a lot, like the Leo resonates, or there's certain placements that'll really resonate. But then like the nodes for in your chart is a great example of like, I don't know, but like I'll make it fit, right? Like for me, it was
Mhm.
my Taurus stellium in my tropical. I was like, I am not like I have a Taurus moon, I do have a bit of Taurus in my chart now, but like I am too much of a spaz to have a Taurus stellium,
Right.
So like those kind of shifts, the slight nuance. So why don't we look at your nodes like this, the north node then? Because like your north node in Pisces in the fifth house, right? Like this is somebody who's here in the tropical system to expand the energy of Pisces, which is the mutable water, like the feminine, the receivership, like the spaciness, like intuition, deep spirituality, and then like in the realm of or the context of the fifth house, which is Leo, which is like pleasures. So like creating from a very etheric kind of place, right? Like really just to expand, but like a very soft and feminine and kind of detached, like not very active or outgoing, more like internal, right? Like creating in the internal world, expanding that sort of Pisces energy. Whereas in the true sidereal, your north node is in Aquarius. Right? Like this is new earth leader energy, right? Like this is you're here. Aquarius is like fixed air. It is the innovator, it's freedom, it's like frick you, I won't do what you tell me kind of energy. Like you're here, and then in the fifth house still, right? So you're here to bring like creative flair to the energy of freedom, of innovation, doing things differently, but like in a detached kind of way, right? Like Pisces is watery, it's pretty emotional, it's like very soft, whereas Aquarius is like detached, more neutral, and to be able to share the kind of messages that you do, right? Like to bring the sort of topics to the collective, to talk about the controversial things that you do, like I don't see that in with a Pisces North Node. Like, I could see you being interested in spirituality, right? And like expanding, the divine feminine and, bringing that kind of energy to the collective. But personally, just based on my felt sense of you, like I feel like this North Node in Aquarius is way more on point.
People always ask, like, "What is your Aquarius placement?" And I'm like, "I have none." And nobody believes it.
Yeah.
Nobody believes it.
Yes, right? Because you can feel it. You can feel it in your aura, right? And so it's obvious. And even on this note, so like looking at current transits, like part of what made me pop off as far as my audience goes. I have a bigger audience on TikTok now because I made some videos in November of 2024 with the whole Pluto and Aquarius thing, right? Like, because Pluto is
That's
not
how
in.
I found you, actually.
Yeah, so it's not. Pluto is just barely in Capricorn. And Pluto has nothing to do with what an age means anyways. Like that is a tropical coming up with a reason for not looking at the celestial cycles, because the
Mm.
age technically is based on what constellation is rising on the eastern horizon at dawn on the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, right? So it's Pisces. We're in the age of Pisces. And based on the size of the constellation, we still have like 5 or 6 degrees left to go of Pisces as far as the shifting ecliptic. So we're going to be in the age of Pisces for like 400 more years based on that. Okay.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, right? And so people are obviously upset when I'm like talking about this because I mean, and this is part of why I am on this mission to really debunk this and get people to think critically about what they're being taught, because so many people in the comments, like if you look at the folded comments of those videos, like people are so mad. They're so mad and they're like going on, they're saying I'm like ruining everybody's day and that like I'm like and I just get a giggle out of it because I'm just making content. Like, how am I ruining your day? Like, but people put so much weight on, like, oh, Pluto is in Aquarius now. That means the world is going to change. Everything's going to get easier, right? But that's not how the social planets work. Like, they move so slowly. It's not like, oh, now it's in this sign. It's all of a sudden a different thing, right? But like, Pluto has nothing to do with that. Pluto is the death bringer. Pluto is like a generational planet that like ends cycles, right? So it being in Capricorn right now is what we need. Like the next 16 years, Pluto's going to dismantle all of the oppressive structures that are reinforcing the patriarchy, the hustle and grind, the overemphasis on the masculine doing energy, right? So like we need that. However, the North Node now looking at transit, actually, I'd be curious to do a transit chart of you because like I feel like the North Node is pretty, you're having like a nodal return actually,
Right.
because yeah, because the North Node is in Aquarius now, which is bringing that energy of the age of Aquarius, right? Because people are like, "Oh, I feel it." I'm like, "Yeah, you do, because but it's not because of Pluto."
Mm.
Right? Because
Wow.
it's the north node in Aquarius, and the south node right now is in, actually, I feel like you're pretty darn close. I can't remember exactly where they're at as far as the nodal return goes, but you're pretty darn close to where they're at in real time at the current transit, because the south node is now in the process of working through Leo, dismantling performative spirituality, like dismantling egoic leadership, anything that is superficial. Like, and this is why we're going to see the bubble burst as far as like the spiritual influencer kind of echelon, people who are out there saying the things, but not being the things.
Mhm. And so can you break down some of the differences in, like, the planets? Like, which planets represent something different? Which ones are, like, the same in both?
So the planetary archetypes are the same in both, right? Like, so like both the planets and the zodiac, like they, if you learned that as far as tropical astrology goes, the only shift as far as moving to this system is just where everything is. So like the aspects, the calculations in tropical are based on the authentic movements of the planetary beings, and they still retain their archetypal compositions and like their patterns, and the interaction between them is the same. Like, you can see the patterns, the aspect patterns are exactly the same. But the thing that shifts is the dial on the outside. So it's just that they're not quite where they say that they are in the sky. So all you
Mhm.
need to do as far as switching the system is learn the sizes of the constellations, like where things are, how long it takes them to move through, and then the inclusion of Ophiuchus, which changes things a little bit as far as like the patterning of the zodiacal energies.
And then so you said about Pluto and some of these more, like, social outer planets. How do they differ?
So they'll have the same energies, they're just in different places basically. So
Oh,
like
okay.
but as far as, so I think maybe what you mean is like what I was talking about with the age of Aquarius, right? So like
Mhm.
this is this is how, when I say that tropical astrology is a red herring, right? Like it's this idea that I feel honestly, and this is probably going to trigger people, but I think it's a psyop. Like I think that it is like part of the new age psyop, which was to bring spirituality to the collective in a way that is actually inverted or like incomplete. So it's like giving us half truths or like teachings that are not complete, or like teachings that are based on the mind, right? Like intellectualizing spiritual teachings, because with tropical, like it's not intuitive. You can't go out and look at the sky and figure it out. You need either an ephemeris, like to old school, or like you need a calculator, or you need like a program in order to figure out what your
Mhm.
tropical astrology is. Whereas with this lens, this is how the ancients did it, right? Like they were looking at the sky and they could see where things were in real time, right? So that's the only difference as far as this goes. Like it's not that the planets have any different meanings, it's just that like tropical astrology has no explanation for what an age actually is, because they don't want you to know that there's importance to where the stars are. So
Mhm.
they came up, I don't even know where that came from as far as Pluto being the age of Aquarius. Like, I feel like it's like the telephone game, you know what I mean? Like somebody says it and then, because this is like a lot of what you see on social media, especially spiritual influencers. A lot of them are misinformed, or they just don't know, or they're so conditioned to the external locus, the intellectualization of information, and putting our authority outside of ourselves, because this is how we're taught in the matrix, right? Like all the institutions teach us to externalize our authority. So somebody says this, right? It's introduced, oh, Pluto in Aquarius, this is the age of Aquarius. And then people just run with it because they don't actually
Mhm.
have the critical thinking or the ability to really think about, I guess that's critical thinking, of like what they're actually talking about. Because when you think about it, if you know astrology, that doesn't make any sense. Like Pluto in Aquarius would dismantle all the shadow aspects of Aquarius, not bring to the forefront the
Mm.
gifted or exalted states of that energy.
Oh, yeah. Very true. You
Mhm.
know, it's really interesting, like you're saying, is that, like, kind of this is one we're going through this right now with spirituality. We see that this is happening. But, like, another example of that would say, like, the Lionsgate portal, because 30 years ago, there was an 8/8 day. Now still everybody regurgitates that this is like this massive portal on 8/8, even though the days have changed, the calendars have changed. It equates to nothing in the sky, and it
Yes.
becomes this kind of spiritual influencer, come to my course, come to my, and it's also
Yeah,
like promote yourself. Yeah.
yeah,
All the Leo aspects, promote yourself, do what you want to do, put yourself out there, share what you want to share, but really like attaching it to these things that are not based in reality, then just do it for doing it. Just be like, come to my meditation, come to my course because I'm going to teach you and I'm fucking awesome.
that's
Like,
right. You got it.
like
Yeah, I'm
just
glad you
do it.
mentioned the Lionsgate because that's another one where I know I kind of get a kick out of, being antagonistic, but like like bursting the bubble on these things is important because um one like the Lionsgate there it is rooted in astronomy, but the dates are off, right? So like the actual Lionsgate has to do with the star Regulus, which is at the chest. Like when you look at the constellation of Leo. So I would recommend like a star charting app for anybody who's curious about looking at this and making astrology a primary experience for yourself. Like there's a number of different astronomical star charting apps that you can download. I use Night Sky, Star Chart, Stellarium. These are other ones that other people use. You literally download the app and you can point your phone at the sky and it'll show you where everything is. You can turn on the line of the ecliptics, you can follow that and see all the planetary beings. So when you do that and you look at the constellation of Leo, the star Regulus is like right at the heart of the lion and it's exactly on the line of the ecliptic. So the actual Lionsgate portal has to do with the alignment of the star Sirius and the sun kazemiing, which means just being at the same point, this star Regulus. So when and I can't remember the date. I feel like it was like end of October, not October, end of August or early September. I can't remember exactly specifically at this point, but that's the authentic Lionsgate. It's not it has
Cool.
nothing to do with the Gregorian calendar, okay? The Gregorian calendar numerology is interesting, right? Like and I do like there's maybe something to the 8-8 as far as that goes significantly, but astronomically, astrologically also like there's no significance to 8-8 at all.
Right, right. And so, it's interesting because, you know, I love this. I love all these concepts. I'm still going to enjoy my hobby of astrology. And I think that's the thing too, is like just the honesty around stuff, right? Is it's like it doesn't need to be like rip the system down, burn the house down, burn all 12 houses down, like
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be that extreme. It's just like being more honest, which is, what I think the spiritual. Okay, so I've been kind of lately really been connecting with this transit of Neptune. Obviously, that's not what's happening in this astrology, but I'm feeling like I feel like all of like the illusions are getting ripped down and like spirituality is going more towards like personal authority
Yep.
versus this kind of Piscean. And so what is that about? Because like you've said before, people feel these things happening.
Yep.
So what is that one specifically?
So there's kind of two prongs to this as far as what you're feeling. So in part, I would say as far as the actual energies in the sky, the current transits, what you're feeling is more so the nodal axis right now, and probably more significant for you because it's a nodal return. So the North Node in Aquarius again expanding. It really is Age of Aquarian energy, right? So like freshness, innovation, like doing things differently, like releasing the shackles of the old, moving out of the fogginess of Pisces, right? Like because the North Node was in Pisces for like 2 years prior to a few months ago, right? So like moving out of that kind of collective fog with the North Node in Pisces, expanding that spirituality, the intangibility, and moving now into Aquarius, it's going to bring more clarity or freedom as far as the collective dharma is concerned, or the energy that we're expanding. While the South Node is again moving through Leo and dismantling the
Mhm.
egoic spirituality, anything that's superficial or done for the like. So I would say, as far as the actual energies in the sky, that is probably what you're feeling. But the other thing is that, and this is why I am on such a mission, and this is part of why I'm so antagonistic with the way that I present the information, because the algorithm likes it when we fight with each other, right? So, so I'm putting these things out there to educate people, like the people who are looking for this or open to this, because part of the like the diabolical nature of tropical, and why I think it's a red herring and a psyop, is because we create our reality based on what we believe, right? So like all these people who are religiously following their tropical astrology, following these transits, all these influencers who are talking about this and making videos about it, and people are consuming it and they're believing it, and they're using confirmation bias, right? So the brain is demonstrated like time and again to be fallible, right? Like whatever the brain wants to find, it will, because it's not in like the brain is just in charge of the physical environment. Really, it wants you to just like seek pleasure, eat, sleep, like have babies, don't die, right? Like that's what the brain wants you to do. So we're using the brain. We're and this is exacerbated or reinforced by the overculture and the institutions that we have been indoctrinated with for generations, teaching us to put our authority outside of ourselves. So we believe what we're told, essentially, right? So we're told this in so many different ways. And we're doing moon rituals and we're celebrating, certain seasons when it comes to the tropical astrology. And this is creating an egregore or a false reality, like a bubble of reality around the people who are focusing on it. So there's that element too, right? So we are feeling or like seeing evidence in our physical world of the things that we're told from tropical astrology, and it's just slightly discordant from what is authentically going on.
Mm. No, I really like that. And, again, like what kind of we keep coming back to is it's kind of like removing the things that are not the self.
Yes.
So, and I mean, just also with the holiday season passing, like it's like Santa Claus, right? Kids are going to experience Santa Claus if they believe in Santa Claus.
That's right.
And, even too, I was talking with my husband about like Bigfoot. He's not a Bigfoot believer. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of evidence.
Yeah.
But any of these things are true or not true based on, even say like
Yes.
the 3-eye atlas thing. I was very like, "Screw that thing." Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
but then other people that I know that believed it was something, experienced something when it came by. So it's like we're going to experience whatever we believe, which is kind of like the most fundamental thing in spirituality and in quantum physics and is we're going to experience what we believe. So then it just becomes a choice of what do you want to like is it helpful to someone to use tropical astrology for them to kind of be able to predict their reality and kind of in a way create the reality that they want and see where things are coming and maybe it's like before you talked about it being more like weather astrology so then it's like kind of like almost being able to control the weather in
Yep.
a way and
Yep.
then you kind of have that which is fine if that's what you want to do right if it's you want to live in a way where you know that the world what's coming up what energy is next what is what am I going to experience and it's another way of kind of like manifestation.
Yes. Yep, absolutely, and I'm glad that you mentioned that again because I meant to acknowledge the concept of like choice, and there's no right or wrong, right? So like a lot of times people, I mean, based on the way I present this information, again, I'm doing it intentionally for the algorithm, and also because I have a Aries, Mars, and Mercury, and I'm a Gemini rising, right? So I kind of get a kick out of pissing people off, but ultimately, like, I'm not, sometimes people are like, "Oh, you think you know everything and, like, this is, better than whatever." I'm like, "No, man, everything's a choice," Like, if you derive value and you enjoy using the tropical astrology, have at her. But, like, if you are a new Earth leader who is here to lead people out of the confines of the matrix, like, you're not gonna do it with tropical. It's not gonna happen because it's only measuring that matrix pattern. It's the matrix in a spiritual cloak, right? So it just depends on what you're doing and what you're leading with or what kind of experience that you want to have essentially.
Right. And so before you mentioned also that you did human design and gene keys. So how do you feel about those things now, which are based off of is again the same type of thing? It's another archetype, it's another tool, it's another predictive way to live your life. But so what do you feel about those things now?
So both of those systems are also rooted in astrology, right? So they for a while there, this is why like when I shared this before we first started recording, like I had like a full-on existential crisis when I had this revelation, right? Because my business was all based on this. And I was especially using human design and gene keys in my coaching, right? And so what I found is that, so when I first realized this, manipulated the genetic matrix software that I use to access human design and gene keys to Sidereal. And the first time that I changed it. There's like a setting called Fagan Bradley, which is like the Western Sidereal, basically. It's closer to the actual sky. It's kind of like Vedic, similarly, but it still uses an even zodiac and it doesn't include Ophiuchus. So I worked with that version of my human design and gene keys for a little while, and it was resonant, and the gene keys, like, we resonate with all of the 64 keys, like they're all within all of us, right? So it resonated. And then I learned that there was another manipulation I could do to the software to designate a specific vernal point. So it gets it even closer to what the authentic sky is using the Athon Gementi master in the zodiac lens. So I've now worked with three versions of my human design and my gene keys. And each time it's just like clicking the dial a little bit closer to the deepest resonance. But also in that process, it really reinforced to me the idea of choice and the everything, like you can choose who you are in any given moment. Now, in my example, my case, all three systems, I'm a manifesting generator, which tracks because I'm a spaz and I can go for hours, right? Like I have that capacity. I'm multifaceted. I'm a polymath. The manifesting generator energy type tracks across the board. I have had clients though who, through the three systems, so I had one client in particular who was a projector in the tropical version. We did like a year and a half of coaching with her feeling like she was a projector, right? And then the first realization with the sidereal, she was a manifesting generator, and she was like, it like gave her this like lease on life, right? Like she was like, oh, I can do things, right? Like because she had like absorbed this identity of like, oh, I'm just a projector. I can only work 4 hours a day. Like I need to rest. Like I'm not powerful, right? And then as soon as I told her she was a manifesting generator, she does myth and storytelling. So she like booked a whole tour. She like booked a tour. She went on tour, like doing storytelling and like did all this stuff that she wouldn't have done, thinking that she was a projector. And then then when I was like, "Oh, there's another shift to this." So I told her that she went back to being a projector, but she was a self-directed projector in the final version, which actually tracks as well. And but she had a defined heart. So she had that energy, like the willpower from the definition in her heart, the self-direction with the projector. But it just shows you though, right? Like how our behavior changes based on what we're told. And so all of these different systems, no matter what lens you're looking at it through or what system it is, like they shouldn't rule your life. Like they should be used as confirmation, and almost like like you can pick and choose which attributes fit you and which ones you want to embody, because ultimately we can be everything at once.
Right, right, and it's like it even like, it reminds me of, like, tarot with, like, the major arcana, how it's like those 22 archetypes, we're always cycling through, and in one area of life, we might be the world, in another area of life, we're the fool, and so it's like,
Exactly.
I think it's really, like, using all of these tools to get closer to the self, and instead of kind of adding more, use it to kind of understand, dissolve, integrate, and then use maybe another version of that tool to integrate and dissolve. And then, so I think it's really, these are kind of moving into this next stage of teachings is like, it's really treading waters again. I don't know if you were ever into Dolores Cannon's work.
I didn't really follow her work too closely, but I'm familiar with some of it.
So this like kind of concept of three waves of volunteers where there was kind of this initial group of people who kind of came here in like the 40s, 50s, 60s that laid a foundation in spiritual teachings. Then 70s, 80s, 90s, there's a second wave which is kind of building upon that.
Mhm.
And then there's this third wave which is the children, which are just kind of going to be totally different in their ways. And, even those teachings, because Dolores Cannon was a very big part of my journey. I do her QHHT. And, so she was a very, very big part of my journey. But what I'm seeing is kind of this second wave.
Mm.
Now I'm seeing a new definition of it like, oh, it's not teaching these people's original spiritual teachings. It's like reinventing them for what people can handle now. And that's what I'm kind of seeing in the collective. And I totally, I'm glad that I asked you about the Neptune thing, that it's actually probably the nodes more so, that this kind of performative spirituality, it's like half of the people that have been into that are kind of like, you know what? I'd rather watch Love Island than another performative channeling in the garb
Mhm.
and the nonsense and so another thing I want to ask you about is because you are bringing up the new earth leaders, and even my concept on that has really changed. I initially believed these beliefs of like 5D, and now I realize that I'm like, "Oh, it's here now in our choices every day, in
Mhm.
how we want to view the world and how we want to deconstruct our own reality and take control of our own reality," and that it's not what I thought it was in these original teachings. These original teachings made it seem like we're gonna, like, buzz off into light bodies and
Right.
everything's utopian and there's no such thing as duality anymore, and you don't even need food. You're just living on water and vibes and air, and, I've another thing from that too is that I've kind of started to suspect that a lot of these predictions of the future of these times that were supposed to be like kind of the shift, I think that they were seeing online spaces. I think they were seeing AI. I think they were seeing virtual reality because they're like, oh, everybody's connected, but they're not physical. That's us right now on two separate sides of the country right now, connecting non-physically and communication changing, so I kind of think, this is what's come up too is, when I've looked into like remote viewing, they talk about how you can remote view the future, but you have no freaking context to know what you're seeing.
Mhm.
So what do you think about kind of when you're using these kind of terms like new earth leaders? Like, has your idea of new earth and these things shifted with these teachings too?
Absolutely, yeah, I would say that we're very much on the same page as far as our understanding with that, but maybe just, like, different words for it essentially, or like, a slightly different, framing of it. So, like, my understanding, of the new Earth is, like, again, it's not a new Earth, it's not physical. I think that interpretation is kinda like you have to get people with where they're at, right? So, like, when we were at a more dense level, right? So we're in a quickening right now. Like the velocity of the universe is speeding up, which is creating more space between our matter. And that's literally what enlightenment is, right? Like it's creating more space between your matter so that the ether, the fifth element, can sneak in. And that's the Godhead, right? So the more enlightened you are, the more space you have, the less density there is in your being, the more that you're able to see beyond the physical world, right? With more density, with more like compression on our material beings, which is where we were at decades ago, we are unable to comprehend the spaciousness, right? So we're operating purely from the brain, the intellectual, and the intellectual interpretation, and that's what new age gave us, right? Like, and I demonize the new age a lot, right? Because I think that it now is outdated, right? But it was helpful at the time. Everything kind of has an evolution, right? So under new age kind of teachings, like the intellectualizing of that, we had no concept for the fact that like time is not linear. The everything's happening at the same time, right? And we're living in a layered reality. So we're right now there's like 12 or 13 depending, or 17 depending on where you're looking at your philosophies, like different layers of our reality that are based on density. So the new earth is not like we're leaving the earth and going somewhere else, or we're leaving our bodies, right? It's that we are creating more space in our bodies so that we're still in our body, so you're having the experience of being a human and all the tactile things that come with that, the sensory experiences of their body and the separation. But that's not all of it. You're able to pull yourself up and out of that experience so that you can access the etheric and the more spiritual, higher realms, right? And like higher, we have to be careful that we're not using like hierarchical language, right? Like it's not like higher is better. It's just more, you just have more access, basically, is how I
Mhm.
understand that.
Yeah, I love that, and it's, like, also kind of mirroring this kinda concept of, like, community, right? There's more space between community now, like, there's more space in kind of all of these aspects of life.
Yes. Yeah, and it gives us more capacity, right? Like we're able to like the in the lower realms, like the using the brain and looking outside of yourself, in the lower realms, we're not able to see the creative solutions, right? We're not able to see anything beyond survival. Eat, sleep, don't die.
Okay, so there's so much stuff for to understand this deeper. So, what about people who want to do a session with you? Like, kind of what is that process like? And especially, I'm assuming most of the people are already into Western astrology. I don't think they just kind of start here. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe in the future, people will kind of start at this true astrology. But, like, so what is that like for someone who's kind of coming in with all these kind of preconceived notions about their identity?
So it's interesting because in my experience, actually, the people who are most drawn to my work, I would say it's a pretty even split from people who, had like a lot of experience, a lot of research put into their tropical, and then they, found my work and they had an existential crisis, and then they come to me in a little while later. There's a good section of those sorts of people who are working with me. But I would say about half of the people are spiritually inclined and they just never were drawn to astrology. Like they were,
Oh.
yeah, like a good chunk of people were like, I just never really resonated with it, or I never really, like, I tried to get into it and it didn't really track, and like, I feel like in that, like, those people typically have better outcomes at the beginning, anyways, right? Because they're not like, there's nothing to undo, there's no programming to unwind or paradigm shifts as far as who you are. It's like a fresh slate. So as far as working with me, there's a variety of different options. I have like mini readings. So if somebody wants me to just do like an intuitive read on their chart, I'll do those through voice note. I do also like full deep dives. So I will go in full research mode and like look at all the different placements. And then I deliver that via a YouTube video that's unlisted.
Oh, cool.
So I do have those available, but honestly, my passion is teaching people to read their own charts because I think kind of on the tail of the last bit of conversation there with the new earth leadership, I think part of being a new earth leader or like living in this new earth paradigm is the return, like the inversion of our locus of control. So, like, a guru, a teacher, a reader, right? Going to somebody to have your chart read. This is putting your authority outside of yourself, even if it's putting it into somebody who is going to connect you with information that is going to expand you. It's still making me the authority over your experience, right? And so, there is some value in that, but I feel like there is more value in everybody just learning the archetypes themselves, like, so learning the planetary archetypes, learning the zodiacal archetypes and how they work together. So I do have a course that I taught in the spring. I'm going to probably be running a live round of that again sometime soon, but at present it's available as like a self-paced study course. And I have a Discord server as well. So my little renegade server of cosmic misfits and mystical black sheep. So in there, I do daily energy reports based on the visible sky. A little written report of all the aspects to keep people in the loop because it is hard to find this information. Like there's like a million different apps out there to tell you where everything is in tropical astrology, but not in true sidereal. And side note, I'm working on an app right now, so it's in development. We'll have that out sometime soon.
Very cool, and I love that kind of daily update because I think that that's kind of a big part, like astrology being like weather. People
Yes.
like that daily update, they like to know, so, I think that that's so cool. So what is your website to find all of this?
All of this information is available through any of the links in my social media. So I just have like a link tree. It goes to like my Ko-fi site for as far as the membership stuff, and then that's how you get into the Discord server as well. So I'll link you up with the link that you can provide in the
Amazing, so that'll
comments
be
or whatever.
below in the
Yes.
description. This was so much fun. I feel like there's so much stuff to dig into. Maybe as I get more into it myself, I might have some more in-depth questions
For
about some of
sure.
these things.
You know what? And there's just one more thing I want to mention about your chart as
Right.
well. If you look at the,
I'll
I'm
put it
not
up on the
if I go on
screen.
is it? Oh yeah.
Put it up.
So one last thing I want to point out is kind of curious that you're drawn to this work, okay? Because this little piece down here in your true sidereal, this is the part of fortune, right? The circle with the cross in it. This is a calculation based on your big three. And your part of fortune, as the name would indicate, is where you like unlock abundance, right? Like where you can really reel in that power as far as your prosperity goes. And yours is right in the middle of the Scorpio and Ophiuchus corridor. So the death and rebirth cycle, pretty darn close to the galactic center. And it's in your second house as well. So I feel being on the front running of this trend and like putting this information out, like even the fact that you're, sharing this with your audience, like this is going to unlock some major prosperity and abundance for you.
Wow. Oh my god, I love that, and I so resonate with it because I really do feel like even long before doing this work, I've always been this kind of death and rebirth person, like a couple years ahead of the trend, almost to the point that it feels like going against the stream. But I'm like, so like, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I'll offend you then.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so does
more
it
of
say that
that.
I'm a Virgo rising
You're
here?
a Virgo rising. Yeah, Virgo rising in the 12th house, right? So, or at the beginning, I guess the rising is the first house. Your moon is in Virgo in the 12th house as well. So, really embodying that Virgo energy, the healer archetype, the organization, but within the 12th house. So there still is that kind of mystery and like shroudedness to you as well.
Wow, and this makes so much sense because I did resonate with, like, the Mercury Virgo because communicating, putting information out there, I put so much information in a 3-minute video sometimes,
Yes.
and so I've resonated with Virgo tendencies, but not really, in the physical, like, I'll just, like, leave something messy and, like I have to look at what my husband's is too, because he's gonna be jealous because he's a Virgo rising, and I'm sure he's not gonna be a Virgo rising anymore.
Yeah, the rising sign does typically change. Although depending on where he was at, because as you can see, Virgo's a pretty big constellation as well, right? So
It
if he was a
is.
Virgo rising at the early degrees of Virgo, he might still be.
Oh, he actually yeah, it's 2 degrees Virgo, so he might still be.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this was so much fun. I highly suggest people kind of dig into this, and I think a good way to dig into it would be to just, either do your course for them to learn it or maybe like a reading for them to kind of get that first grasp of what is the differences, like how does this maybe add up because even just these things that we've talked about like so resonate versus the regular Vedic. Because some of the regular
Absolutely.
Vedic stuff that I've looked at, I'm like, no, 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 that wasn't
No.
me.
No, yeah, and, like, Vedic is, honestly more complicated too, like, there's a lot of, like, things with the nakshatras and the moon and all of that, and it's still based on an even zodiac, right? So it's not quite capturing the visible sky, like, in my experience, the true sidereal is the most resonant if you're looking to actually harness the energies of the cosmos and what is going on above us.
I love it. Thank you so much, and, I can't wait to maybe catch up and go deeper into some of this stuff once I have better deeper questions.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure and like this is my favorite thing to talk about. So let me know. I'm open.
Wow, you made it to the end of the episode. Congratulations. That tells me something about you, that you enjoy long form content. So I think you might enjoy this YouTube channel. You might want to like, subscribe, because that's what we do around here. On Ultraminds podcast, we do long form conversation with some of the leading minds in spirituality, consciousness, astrology, and more. But every Tuesday night, what we do is a Tuesday night live where I do a solo long form conversation, interacting with the comments, answering questions. And overall, what we're doing here on this page is deconstructing a lot of spiritual bypassing type of values and exploring consciousness through a new lens.